Good afternoon, everyone. It's Robert from On My Turntable. Hope you have a great afternoon. It is Monday afternoon. No coffee today. Uh, that's usually for the mornings. I want to continue my look at Deep Purple, this time from 1990 to 2003. Their later 5 albums. There will be 5 more to go after this one, but I'm just going to keep it at 5. I didn't do any marked versions because the lineup changed. They went back, and it's just too much to keep track of. But I still want to look at these albums. They're great albums. I now have all their studio albums set for 2, and unfortunately, the 2 belong in this grouping. But I'll still show you a picture of them, and I'll talk a little bit about them. So let's get into it here. So Deep Purple. 1990 to 2003, a great band you need to listen to. Obviously, amazing stuff. So after House of Blue Light, their 12th studio album, featuring the Mark II version of the band, which included Ian Gillan on vocals, Ritchie Blackmore on guitars, Roger Glover on bass, John Lord on keyboards, and Ian Gillan on drums. Ian Pace on drums. They were still rocking it out, but the strain was starting to happen within the band. There was always that feud between Ritchie Blackmore and Ian Gillan, and it continued. It was rough in the studio, difficult to record. It took too long, and despite the talents of each individual, the 5 individuals, they just weren't firing on all 5 cylinders. So Ian Gillan was fired from the band. Unfortunately, again, he was fired. And they tried to make this album sound current, which didn't really sit well with the fans. Also, their fan base was used to their straight-ahead rock version. So it still hit number 10 in the charts in the UK and number 34 in the States, so it didn't do too bad. After between the release of their next album and House of Blue Light, Ian Gillan was no more in the band. So step ahead to October 1990. So this happened in early December, and then October of 1990, they came out with their 13th studio album, Slaves and Masters. I have this from this great little box set here, featuring 3 albums. This one features, it's hard to see, Jolyn Turner on vocals. Jolyn Turner, ex-Rainbow lead singer. They tried to get Jimmy Jameson from Survivor, but he had too many obligations under contract, that type of thing. But it may have been a different dynamic for the band. Jolyn Turner's not a bad singer, and it's not a bad album. But compared to the rest of the catalog, I would say this is my least favorite album by the band. It just sounds more Rainbow than Deep Purple, which stands to reason because you've got 2 members of Rainbow in there, Ritchie Blackmore and Jolyn Turner, and it just sounds too much like Rainbow. If you compare it to the other albums, their top 10, even their later albums, some of their great later albums, this one sits pretty low on the totem pole. But you've still got some good tracks on here. You got King of Dreams, Love Conquers All. The song Fire and Dynamite was used in the film, the soundtrack for the film with the same name. But even John Lord didn't play on that track. So they started to work on their next album after that, 1993's The Battle Rages On. And a lot of pun in that title track. That's that album title track, because there's always a continuous battle with Deep Purple for sure. But they realized that Joe Lynn Turner just couldn't cut it. And this would be their 14th studio album. And they would bring in and bring back Ian Gillan, their Mark II vocalist. They had almost hired Mike Denio, I believe his name is, who was a singer from Riot. But again, obligations that inhibited from joining. So they brought back Ian Gillan, but it would be the last of the Mark II lineup. It would be the Mark II lineup since Perfect Strangers, actually. But it would be the last, unfortunately. Ian Gillan had to rework all the songs sung by Joe Lynn Turner, who had recorded most of the tracks. So he reworked them, put them in his own vocal style. But Ritchie Blackmore didn't like the album at all. Didn't like. He disliked everything about it. And after a show in Helsinki, he left the band. And they were on tour at the time. So they needed a quick replacement. So they brought in Joe Satriani to finish off the tour. And it's not bad. It's not a bad album at all. You got Anya and Time to Kill. Pretty good album. Battle Rages On. But with the tour done and more songs that they've written, they needed to continue as a band. They needed also to find a guitar player. And they brought in Dixie Dregs guitarist, the amazing Steve Morse, and who brought different dynamics to the band and brilliant guitar work. Not that Ritchie Blackmore is a bad guitar player; he's an amazing guitar player. But Steve Morse has that keyboard, that fretboard all over the place. So they worked on Purpendicular. 1996 released their 15th studio album. You got great tracks like Sometimes I Feel Like Screaming, The Aviator. Less keyboards on this one to more focus more on Steve Morse and the harmonics he brought in on his guitar. Just brilliant stuff. And he was set as their guitarist. I don't have the next two albums. I don't have Abandon, their 1998 release, and their 16th studio album, and Bananas, their 17th release, and their 2003 release, and their 17th studio album. These are the only two I don't have in the catalog. I've heard them. I've got some burnt copies of them. They're pretty darn good albums, for sure. So Abandon, the second album with Steve Morse, and the last to feature John Lord, the keyboardist who was with them from the beginning. He would eventually retire in 2002, and then we'd lose him later on because he got ill and that type of thing. But I haven't listened to it a lot, but there's great tracks on here. Any Fool Know That, Finger to the Bone, Jack Ruby, and they'd also released Bloodsucker, which was on their In Rock album, which is a great track. They reworked that into a newer version. Sounds really good. Also, their 17th studio album, Bananas, which I'll show a picture of. Also show a picture of Abandon previously. 2003 released their 17th studio album, as I said. Be the first to feature keyboardist Don Airey, an amazing player in his own right. Also the first Purple album to have some backing tracks with the song Haunted Feeling, featuring, the song Haunted, featuring Beth Hart, amazing singer in her own right. It also contains Contact Lost, which was an instrumental written by Steve Morse in tribute to the Columbia astronauts and their crash. Hope to get those two albums. I know Banana is a very expensive, even in CD. It's like $178 or something like that. It's ridiculous, the cost of that album. But hopefully I'll find them in the wild someday. But that's my look at Deep Purple from 1990 to 2003. Definitely a great band you need to listen to. And then coming up, I'll finalize their albums by doing their last 5 studio albums from 2005 to their latest compilation album in 2021. And there you go. And then eventually I want to do a album ranking from least to best. So I'll do that in the next few days as well. So there you have it, guys. There's my look at Deep Purple, and from 1990 to 2003. Great band you need to listen to. Love you all. Please hit the like and subscribe button below. Thank you to all that have done that so far. Have yourself a wonderful day. Take care. We'll talk to you soon.